Fans of the Horus Heresy and Warhammer 40,000, thank you very much for joining me for a how-to and build video. And in this video we are going to be making a very interesting model. We are going to be building none other than the Legio Custodes Tribune Ixion Hale from the Horus Heresy range by Forge World. Now this is the Warhammer World and event only exclusive model. So unfortunately for collectors in the wider world, this guy isn't very easy to get hold of, but I thought you might appreciate the chance to see him being built if you're not able to lay your hands on one of these guys yourself. So that's what we're going to do in this video. All the parts are still on the sprue. I'm going to try and get this done in about an hour. I think it's doable. And then, as I always do with these build videos, I've got a number of chat topics that I will talk about as I build and work through the model. So that's the plan. Let's first start off with a quick rundown of all the tools that I'll be using. Firstly, in the cutting category, we've got a razor saw, and this is for removing larger parts off the sprues. We've then got a pair of fine model cutters. These will be used for snipping parts off sprues. We've got a pair of toughened wire cutters, and I'll be using these for cutting piano wire for any pinning I need to do. On the knife front, I've got a blunt craft knife and I've got a sharp craft knife. For filing and sanding, I've got a needle file with a flat base, tapering to a point and a curved upper, and then I've also got a FlexiFile flex pad sanding stick, and this is a 6000 grade sandpaper. It's for fine finishing if I need it. For drilling, I've got two pin vices. This one with a very thin drill I'll use for drilling any pinning holes, and then this one with the thicker bore I'll use if I decide to drill out the gun barrel on his bolt weapon. Miscellaneous, we've got a bradawl spike for doing guide holes and any fine details that need whittling out, and then we've got duster brush for cleaning up turnings. And then finally I've got some medium thin super glue for adhesive. Right, so let's make a start by removing the torso from the key. So I've got a whole set of attachment points there. Then we've got some shims to remove on these side armour plates. We will do this with a razor saw. Actually, I'm going to use these snippers just to cut these finer shims off first. We'll drop the camera down a little. There we go, that's good. Nice and easy. Right, we'll go with these clippers and remove some of this, some of the remaining gates. Right then, so I said I had some chat topics to talk about, and I've got what I hope are a very interesting set of chat topics for us to go through. Right, there's four. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the latest announcements around 8th edition model releases. And there's been a post on the Warhammer community website, which I'll leave a link for in the description, of a number of new models and box sets that are coming up. So I'm going to talk about the models, not the box sets. Forget about the models, let's first talk about the concept. So Games Workshop have said that these new models are going to be, quote, easy build. I don't know exactly what that means yet. I mean, is that going to be in the style of a Primaris Marines, etc. from the Dark Imperium starter set? And they're also going to be supplied in a coloured plastic. I think they'll be blue. I don't know if they'll be supplied in multicoloured plastic to try and give them more of an immediate good look out the box. And I guess if they supply them in the right colour blue plastic, well, for Ultramarines, you know, it'll be great if you're an Ultramarine player, of course, or maybe a Crimson Fist or something equivalent. You won't have to, you could just paint details in if you want something really quick and dirty. It's an interesting thing, that. It sounds a bit like they did some collaboration work with Revell using some old mid-90s models. They turned them into a quick assemble format, and I would think they must have had some commercial success with those, and that might be why they're adopting that for these 8th edition miniatures. So that, I guess, is let's call it the business proposition. As a collector, I guess my concern is if we're going to see lots of models like this, and they're not going to be as good for conversion. It's just a reality. Monopose limited component models are not very good to convert, or you can convert them, you just got a lot less opportunity to convert. So interesting, we'll see how that goes. I mean, the idea of coloured plastic, I mean, that's been done many times before. I mean, Back in the 80s, when I was getting into modelling, I remember Matchbox kits. They did a whole range of military models, so tanks and aircraft, and their kits were actually very good quality. I can't remember who actually made them for them. Maybe one of you people remember. They were very good kits, and they were better quality than Airfix of the time. But they were supplied in 2 or 3 colours of plastic just to make them look better when you built them. So it does remind me of that a bit. It's an old idea, it's nothing new. Right, in terms of the models, so the first model is a Primaris Marine Captain in, I think, it just looks like he's in Mark X armour, so standard Primaris armour, as opposed to the hero that comes with the Dark Imperium starter set, which is equipped with the Gravis armour. So this guy is he's still very heraldic in style, but is much more toned down, shall we say, than compared to that the Gravis armour Captain. The second model, which I did have a little giggle about, is a Space Marine Librarian, a Primaris Space Marine Librarian, and the sculptors at Games Workshop have done a complete rip-off of Ixion Hale's head. So they've given him a goatee, tash, and they've painted it as if he's got sort of a wizened white beard. So yeah, so that did make me giggle. I thought, yeah, that's just a complete rip-off of Hale. But then again, that's not really the case, because Forge World was always originally about, one of the purposes of Forge World was around testing the market for stuff that could port over to GW. And of course, there's no internal competition between the two parts of the organisation. None whatsoever, ever, of course not. Don't believe any stories you hear about that. So there's him. Again, he's very kind of heraldic, I suppose like a classic style Space Marine 40k hero. So those Heresy fans, you know, he's going to look a bit OTT for certainly my tastes, but you know, it's another model. Then the infantry that are coming out are what are called the Reavers, and this is something genuinely new again for the Marines. And these are Primaris Marines who are wearing lightened versions of Primaris Mark X armour, and they've got these skull faces, and they're clearly, well, they're kind of like, they've got these skull faces, they've got, what else have they got? Yeah, they've got skull faces, they're armed with a bolt pistol, a suppressed bolt pistol, and a combat blade. They, pose-wise, these look like they're easy build models, and the poses don't look particularly dynamic. They looked rather wooden, I thought, which was a shame for a model that is supposed to be representing a soldier that's fast moving. A little bit of a disconnect straight away there. But you know, I don't know. We'll see if we don't know if we're going to move to multi-part models on these guys later on. So the collectors and the more enthusiastic modelers get some decent material to work with. So those guys are coming, and to be honest, I don't really want to buy any more Primaris Marines, but I am going to buy these guys because I'm going to have a little bit of fun about them from a creative standpoint, and I'll more on that will become clear later. So there's those as well. So they've clearly got a whole bunch of Primaris Marines lined up, ready to release, and it's just going to be interesting to see what else they've got. You know, I understand that the philosophy behind these Primaris Marines is to create things that are new, tactically new in the Space Marine arsenal. So from that, I don't think, if I hold to that statement that was mentioned to me, we're not going to see Primaris Devastator Marines. Who knows though? Of course, Games Workshop are going to skirt they've got a difficult kind of path to tread, and well, who knows, that difficult path may well end up causing ructions, because if they're very successful with their Primaris Marines commercially and they go more and more towards them, could we see the gradual disappearance of the classic Space Marine, as I call them? I don't know, we shall see. However, fluff-wise, because the Primaris Marines have been created as a distinct unit, can't simply undo the old Space Marines unless they wrote some fluff to say, oh, all Space Marines are now Primaris Space Marines, which that would be too much even for me. I think we've got them for a good long while. Just cleaning up clean up some mold seam on this cloak, which is quite a tricky space to clean up because it's concave in shape. Second topic, so it's Friday today, June the 30th, and the tickets have just gone on sale for the Forge World Open Day at Warhammer World on Sunday the 13th of August. If you've got the geographical flexibility to get to that and the funds to afford to go, that'll be a good day. I've been to lots of these. I really enjoy them. I love seeing what's coming up. I like being able to chat with the designers and the writers. It's always a good day in that regard. Yeah. So yeah, and I'll be there. If any of you guys will be going, but yes, I'll definitely be there. So that'll be interesting. And maybe we'll get to start feeling what way the heresy is going in light of recent events and the introduction of 8th edition. So it'll be interesting from that point of view as well. So Forge World Open Day, 13th of August. I think the tickets cost £12.50. £12.50 includes entrance into the miniature gallery. There's an air bubble there on his toe that will need filling later. There's a couple of bits of filling that this will need doing. I mean, to be honest, I'm happy just to finish that up later on because it's not a particularly difficult model to fill this once it's built. Sometimes I fill the parts before I put them together, depending if assembly is going to preclude the ability to do the filling. So that's that done. So what do we want next? We're going to need, I think, the arms. That brings me on to the main chat topic of this video, which is a battle report. And this is no normal battle report. This is a battle report on my first ever game of Warhammer 40,000 8th edition. So, of course, I hear you ask, ooh, so what was it like playing as Primaris Marines? Well, let me tell you, I didn't play any Primaris Space Marines. In true me style, I like to think outside the box. And this first game, me testing what I've been talking about over the course of my last few videos, playing the Horus Heresy in 8th edition. So I guess there's a couple of bits to this, isn't there? There's talking about the concepts I've used and the way I'm approaching this, as well as the actual game itself. So let's talk about concepts first and assumptions. Two resources, books-wise, me and my mate bought for this. The first was the Index Imperium Part 1, the Adeptus Astartes. The second two was Imperial Armour book, the Imperial Armour Indexes. So firstly, the forces of the Adeptus Astartes, and secondly, the forces of the Astra Militarum, or the Imperial Guard. So those are the books that we bought, and very simply, the idea is to just get as much Imperial equipment as possible in lists. And this is basically because there's a load of 40k units, or units that are now in 40k, that have Heresy era tech, and because most of the weapons have individual points values, you can take stuff off those units in effect and use them to build up heresy lists. So that's the first thing, the resources we need. The second thing was essentially the organisation concept, and we've stuck to the Legion organisation as per the Crusade army list from Forge World. And then what we simply did, so for example, we stuck to tactical marines. In squads of 10 we have tactical support squads, we have heavy support squads, etc, etc. Now we stuck to fairly basic troop choices. There are a whole load of heresy stuff that don't have a direct comparison in 40k yet. So we did keep fairly basic troop choices. It works. Some special rules we just left out. So we left out the rule of Fury of the Legion for tactical marines, and we kept the tactical marines with their standard 40k morale rule of "and they shall know no fear." I think one obvious development is to put Fury of the Legion back in, just exactly as it's written in the Heresy, i.e. 7th edition, and then take "and they shall know no fear" away, and maybe just give them the Legion era Space Marines a very mild morale bonus. Because of course, in the Heresy, Space Marine morale is more fallible than it is in 40k. In 40k, Space Marine morale is the envy of everything that doesn't have the rule Fearless. That's a basic premise there. We ignored army list restrictions in 40k, and we just added up the points for a particular unit as it was represented in the Heresy. We used Captain as a Centurion, kind of. Centurion cum Praetor, so it was kind of a bit of a fudge. Obviously we left out the Legion tactics stuff, so we didn't. So I played as Iron Hands, my friend played as Sons of Horus, so we didn't use any Legion specific rules. Just from a point that was more, well, to start with, I guess there is a balance question, but also just from a simplicity question for playing a new rule set. So that was the other decision we made for playing this game. We're thinking that you could, a lot of the Heresy era rules, you could just try port them straight into 40k. So for example, the Iron Hands, any shooting attacks against them get a -1 to hit, and then you put something in to make the advance slower, or even make them take a morale check, just like in the Heresy. So that's a possibility there. This model's cleaning up nicely so far. As you often get on Forge World, there are some old seams, but seams we don't mind. It's the slips we rabidly dislike. Let's do the helmet as well. Got to give it to them. The helmets on these guys look absolutely boss. They look great. They look good on the original GW plastic sculpts, but you can't beat fine detail you get by transferring into the resin medium. Again, we've got a few more air bubbles to fill here, so those will need sorting out later. But nothing, it's very surface, and it's not too bad. That's fairly small. It's kind of like on the body of some of the plume, so it's not destroyed any detail, so that's fine to fix. Right, so back to the game. So let me talk about the game itself. So we played I think it's an Endless War scenario, so just like the basic introduction scenario. We played with the advanced rules on terrain. I mean, advanced rules, ha 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 ha. I consider them really just basic rules. The game size was 1,000 points. I played as Iron Hands, so I was a loyalist in effect, and my friend played as Sons of Horus. We kind of like had a loose, what I'd describe as being a loose gentleman's agreement, just to limit ourselves vehicles-wise to one Rhino for the first game, and then stick to infantry. This is where we have got some mould slippage to sort out. There's a mould slippage on the side of Ixion Hale's head. I think I can fix this. It'd be better if it wasn't there, Forge World. This can be fixed. So, 2 10-man tactical squads as troops, a 5-man Terminator squad. These were Gorgons. No special rules for Gorgons, just bought them as Indomitus Terminator armour, armed with combi bolters, power fists. The hammer bearer had a thunder hammer, and one marine had a graviton crusher, i.e. a graviton gun. The graviton crusher rules I got from the Knight Styrics rules in Imperium Armour Astra Militarum book. I then had a Rhino, a Demos Rhino, armed with a combi bolter and a heavy bolter. Oh, in effect, by the way, actually, just to go back on this is in effect a match play game, points wise. So I took 2 apothecaries as apothecaries. These are now characters, they're not assigned to anything. You know, they're independent characters now. And that in effect was one elite's choice in the old money. I took 1 Tech Marine, armed with his basic gear, so Artificer armour in effect, and a Power Axe, and a Servo Arm. I took a 5-man heavy support squad, all armed with heavy bolt guns. And then finally, my detachment commander, my warlord, if you would prefer, was a Space Marine captain, equipped with power armour, an iron halo. But be careful of this ear here. An iron halo, a bolt gun, and a power fist. So quite common commander fare there. As I was to find out, not the optimum choice for how the battle turned out. So yeah, I think that was my force. My opponent had 2 15-man tactical squads. Oh, his tactical squads were despoilers, so they were all armed with chainswords. He had 1 apothecary, a heavy support squad armed with heavy plasma guns or plasma cannon if you prefer, a tactical support squad at 10 men strength armed with plasma guns, and then his warlord was a captain, and he was armed with a relic blade and a bolter, or a mastercrafted bolter as they are in effect now. Relic blade is basically like a hard-hitting, high damage power sword. So instead of doing 1 wound per strike, it does D3 wounds per successful hit. And that was going to have an effect later as well. The forces, so we set up. Now the setup's different in 8th. You kind of take it in turns to place a unit. It isn't a case of one side has the initiative, the other doesn't. No, you still need to see who places the first unit, but we just took it in turns to place them, so that was quite fun. I don't think that's quite match play specific. I've not got that far yet, but it was different. And there's no seizing the initiative, so you didn't have that whole risk of deploying and then finding everything went Pete Tong from the word go. Just going to cut the post down here, so it doesn't quite fit because of the slight mould slips. Yeah, I mean, there's a bit more than a slight mould slip on this head. I mean, you can see that it's actually cleaned up fine, but it would have been so much better if it hadn't had a mould slip on what is the most prominent detail on the final finished miniature. Make of that what you will. And guess what you're seeing, like the last 5 or so minutes, 6 minutes I spent cleaning this head up, that's putting right those moulding faults. You know, best if you don't have to do that, isn't it? Right, let's do these rather ornate and beautiful looking pauldrons. They are brilliant. Right, so back to the fort. So the game deployment. So terrain was kind of like scattered urban terrain and lots of craters. I deployed, now how did I deploy? I deployed 10 tactical marines in the centre holding a large ruined building. The Rhino carrying 10 tactical marines on my right flank with the tech marine. On my left centre, I deployed my Gorgon Terminators with an apothecary squad, and on my far left, in a nice crater with a good field of fire, I deployed my heavy support marines. And then my opponent, well, I think my opponent I had to deploy first, so I was at a slight disadvantage, and my mate deployed his plasma weapons to kind of counter my Terminators. Word go, I was thinking, oh gosh, he's got all of his plasma weapons on the same flank as my Terminators. Although, having the medic and the captain with them and being supported by the heavy bolts, I thought, no, that'll be alright. It wasn't. So my mate got the first turn as well, and he advanced all of his tactical marines forward. Oh, sorry, his tactical marines were on, I'll express in terms of my flanks. He had 15 in the centre, 15 on my right flank, so opposing my Rhino Marines. On my left flank, he had his heavy plasma gunner squad, and then he also had his tactical support squad armed with the plasma guns. So his tactical marines surged forward, as did his tactical support marines with the plasma guns. His heavy support squad with the heavy plasma guns, he deployed them on the edge of a crater. He opted to go for accuracy of fire on the first turn and didn't move. And he opened up on my Terminators and he overcharged his shots. And let me tell you, heavy plasma guns don't half put out a lot of fire. He got off to a good start with vaporising 2 of the Gorgon Terminators. In the centre, he had a few shots at my Marines, and I took a couple of casualties on my centre squad. He actually put all of his bolt fire into my centre squad and took a couple of casualties there, was that. So my turn 1, my heavy support, heavy bolter squads, they stayed put. My Rhino advanced forward to a barricade, getting ready to deploy its marines. A bit of gunky stuff to clean up here. Gorgons advanced forward in My Gorgons advanced forward with the captain and their apothecary into a crater. They got out of a line of fire of the heavy plasma guns. Actually, sorry, no, they were already out of a line of fire of heavy plasma guns. The casualties on the first turn were from his plasma gunners. So they kept out of that line of fire They sought cover and they squared up to engage his plasma tactical support marines. So my guys then opened up, bolter fire from my tactical squad, did a couple of casualties to his centre tactical squad. The Rhino picked off, I think, a guy or two with its combi bolter and heavy bolter, which was nice. The heavy bolter support marines opened up with all 15 of their shots on his heavy plasma gunners, and they scored really well actually, and they took out 4 of his troops, so they actually nearly wiped the squad out. It was great. Okay, that was excellent. My Terminators let rip with their guns on his plasma gunners, but I don't actually think I inflicted any casualties. That wasn't so great. Even with the Graviton Crusher, which is now actually a really good marine killing weapon. Although it's a bit less flavoursome because it hasn't got the movement inhibiting abilities at the moment. There was a few casualties to the Horus player, but nothing particularly severe really. So now we're going to take the axe off and do that. Got another air bubble there, that'll need filling. Got a few air bubbles dotted around this model, which is a bit of a shame for a collector's series piece. Just luckily for Forge World, I've not had to. None of those ended up on damaging details requiring a replacement. So my mate's next turn, both squads of tactical marines came on at full pelt moving forward. They didn't advance, they were just advancing forward because they wanted to fire their bolters. Started to line himself up to assault my building position in my centre, and his plasma support squad advanced forward and lined themselves up on the Terminators nicely. I forgot in my turn, my apothecary managed to bring one of my Terminators back. If a unit there within 6 inches of has taken casualties, in lieu of shooting or fighting, you can roll a dice, and on a 4+, 1 casualty is returned with 1 wound remaining. So yeah, I did get to bring back a Terminator, which was good. Just now it's got a bit of a bend on that. I'll have to straighten that out. I'll have to take a little pause to do that in the video. And then his other tactical squad moved towards the Rhino. So yeah, it was really pressing the attack from the word go. The remains of his heavy plasma gunners, who passed their morale check, the last surviving dude with the medic, hopped into a crater to desperately seek some cover. His captain was with his tactical squad in the centre, and he advanced forward as well. When it came to firing, this was a bit of a bad turn for me. The plasma gunners let rip with a volley of overcharged shots, and one guy managed to immolate himself, but the result of this fire was devastating, and my Gorgon squad got wiped out to a man, which was suboptimal, shall we say. So, tactical lesson number 1 of 8th edition. Plasma is reconfirmed as being a very effective way of dealing with Terminators, and it kind of in a way might even be better than it was before, because, well, it's probably about comparable, I don't know. We're doing 2 wounds per shot and wounding on a 2+, and reduced to an invulnerable save. I mean, even in a crater with cover, the armour save with the cover bonus was still only as good as their invulnerable save. So yeah, they got wiped out, and the medic was left looking bemused and picking up bits of gene seed out of the charred remains. So that wasn't great, and then his centre squad unleashed a volley of bolter fire on the opposite squad and inflicted a few more casualties, so they were then down to 6 guys. They had an apothecary with them as well, or supporting. They were looking a little bit shaky. And then he put the charge in. I think his other guys firing didn't achieve anything. No, they didn't. No, they shot at the Rhino. Oh no, they did. They inflicted one wound on the Rhino with their bolter fire. So yeah, just tinked it a bit. But then he put the charge in against my squad in the centre position, so in the ruin, and he made the charge. I don't know, did I kill him? I think yes, I dropped one of his guys with Overwatch fire, but there was still like 13 or 14 of them coming in, so yeah, I was well outnumbered. Now this is a bit where the game, sort of the new structure of the game comes in. So the first observation is the fact that infantry are no longer encumbered in normal movement by terrain meant that he was able to close on me very quickly compared to what you would be used to in 7th. The second thing is chainswords. Yes, chainswords are now great. So you don't get a bonus attacks for having extra weapons. It's all in your base attack stat. If you have multiple weapons, you decide which weapon you decide how many attacks you will make with each weapon. But chainswords are great because they give a bonus attack. So all of his guys are on 2 attacks to my 1. Yeah, I think did he wipe the squad out? No, actually, I think on his charge he didn't actually. I think he might have done a casualty or 2. So it wasn't actually that bad, mainly because he got constricted with the building I was in. He couldn't get enough guys in to really bring his full strength to bear. So I think he only ended up with about 8, it was about 12 attacks. I think I might have done an attack or 2 back. Anyway, everyone's morale held, nobody ran off. And I think his last heavy plasma gunner popped a shot at my heavy bolter troops and took out 2 guys actually, yeah. So once again, watch out for plasma, it's really potent. And he didn't even need to shoot at overcharge, he just fired at standard shot rate. That's just about there now. I'm going to pause this video. I'm going to go straight in this with a bit of heat and then we'll be back to do the assembly. Okay, so I'm back. So I've straightened out the handle of the power axe or paragon blade or whatever it may be. I just forget the name of this weapon now. What's it called? Paragon axe, there we go. I was nearly right first time around. I've also taken the opportunity to finish cleaning it up because there was a bit more cleanup than I thought originally, and I wanted to try and get the whole build in. I've also taken the liberty and cleaned up the other parts as well, as you can see by this big old pile of resin debris. So I really wanted to try and get this assembled within the hour. You can see what it looked like. Cleaning up the rest of the parts was fairly straightforward. There's some fairly chunky mould slips on this thing, on these sort of twist banisters on the upright, so yeah, they took a bit of doing. The misery cord had a big old slip on it, which I covered in my unboxing review, similar to the face. A little bit to take off on the iron halo, but all in all not too bad. We got there. Nothing that couldn't be fixed, let's say. There's a fair few air bubbles I've come across which will all need filling later, but now let's get straight into the business of assembling Ixion Hale. So I think the first thing is to pin the power axe hand because it's only got a point of contact on the base and I really don't want this breaking at a later date. So it's a good fit, so I'm just going to bob a little pin in there. Back to the battle report. So where did I get to? Now, you'll have to apologise me if I forget my position. I think we're on turn 2, and I seem to remember my Terminators had just had a stuffing, hadn't they? Yeah, so we fought the melee in the centre position of the battle, and there were a few casualties, but nothing major. And then it went to my mate's turn. In my mate's next turn, what happened? So the Terminators were wiped out. He continued to advance again with his tactical marines. Well, he piled more of his tactical marines in. Oh, right, let's go back to turn 2. The thing I did forget to say was my captain and the apothecary who had been accompanying the Organ Terminators were now on their own. So they actually hopped over and joined in the melee with the tactical squad in the centre position. And I don't think the medic inflicted any casualties, but the captain whacked a couple of his guys with his power fist. So that was quite nice. You know, a captain with it, because of his high fighting stats, it wasn't a bad guy to have a power fist on, which gets a -1 to hit, of course. So that happened. But he, you know, I mean, these were big squads. These were 15 strong. So he still had, I think he still had about 10 guys. And his captain was now getting close to the fight. And indeed, in his turn, his captain charged in and joined the fray. There was a bit more shooting. What was it? His plasma gunners moved up behind a wrecked truck on the left flank. And they basically were hiding from the heavy bolter team. And on the right flank, his tactical marines had continued to advance forward. So that was all, it was all starting to happen. There you go, so just so you can see, there you go, we've got a pin in the wrist. Oops, flying axe there. Now I'm going to mark a guide hole in the elbow, in the forearm, not the elbow. And then I'll drill a corresponding hole into this side, just not a bit, just a bit to clean up there. Yeah, and the melee definitely went his way this turn. Now, if people have commented, if you've noticed, heroes have got a lot more wounds in 8th. Well, let's put it this way, they need them, because my captain got wiped out in a single round of attacks by his captain. He came in with his Paragon Blade, which is a -3 save modified power sword relic blade, sorry, doing D3 wounds per hit, and yeah, just wiped. My captain had taken 2 wounds already from fighting his horde of tactical marines. But yeah, his captain came in, put the charge, 4 attacks, splat, my guy was dead. So yeah, interesting that, and I guess it shows that power fists are, I think their use has really changed. If you're fighting enemy marines, or enemy infantry, let's put it that way, they're less useful. If you take a power fist, you want to be fighting multi-wound models, so probably it might be useful against Terminators, but against standard marines you're better off with a power sword. And enemy heroes, you want the relic blade, without a shadow of a doubt. That just left my 2 apothecaries on that side. I tell a lie, that left me with 1 apothecary who was running for the Rhino. The apothecary who was fighting alongside the captain got sliced to pieces by a horde of Sons of Horus Despoiler Marines, and that was the end of those 2. Yeah, so new wound totals don't really give these heroes particularly high protection when subjected to direct attack, I would say. Not when you've got the right weapons to hand. So that things were starting to look a little bit suboptimal, going on terrible for the Iron Hands. I thought, well, you know, let's see if we can achieve anything else. I deployed my Marines out of the Rhino, and they let rip with a hail of bolter fire. They jumped behind a barricade and they let rip with a hail of bolter fire on his dudes. His right flank despoiler squad, who then... I tried for the charge, even though I was breaking out my cover, because it's clear that it's advantageous to get the charge in now, but I didn't make the distance. I think he actually might have killed one of my guys with his Overwatch fire. Oh well. Yeah. And then my medics managed to bring back one of the heavy support marines being taken out with a heavy bolter, so that was useful. That kept my other flank at least in the fight a bit. That was about it for my turn, so I might have taken a couple more of his guys down with the bolter and heavy bolter fire from the Rhino, but it was clear that things were very much turning against me at this point. In my opponent's last turn, which was the last turn that anything of real significance or consequence happened, he charged in on the right flank with his tacticals and engaged my tacticals in a melee fight across the barricade. So, and that kind of bumped and grinded a bit. The Tech Marine was a useful guy to support the fight. These low-level Marine heroes, so Tech Marines, Apothecaries and the like, they're actually pretty decent now in combat, and the fact that they get 4 wounds means that, you know, they're not weak by any measure of the word. They're decent combat characters, and particularly with Tech Marine, who can get a load of power weapons and have a servo arm and stuff, and he gets a 2+ armor save. Yeah, he's not bad. He's not a bad little dude. We both took a few casualties on the barricade fight on the right flank. That was pretty much that turnover. I mean, I played to the end of my turn, a few more casualties, didn't really achieve much. In my previous turn, his captain had wiped out, when he'd wiped out my captain and the tactical squad in the centre, his captain had been the closest models to my heavy bolter marine, so I let rip, and I think I had 12 shots on him. And did I make an impression? I took 2 of his wounds off with the 12 heavy bolter shots, but he got away with it, so that was one of my last decent chances to make an impact on him. But that was pretty much it, really, and at that stage we said, well, yeah, I think we'll call it now. It was getting quite late, really. We were on a sort of a school night, shall we say. And yeah, so we just called the game. Right, I'll just pause for a second. Now, okay, that's a good fit. This doesn't need pinning, this bit, it's fine. So yeah, that was the end of the fight. So it was a win for the Sons of Horus. His plasma spam was very effective, and you know, hats off to my mate for picking an effective force. You know, I guess I fluffed my deployment a bit, particularly with the Gorgon Terminators. I made that classic error of ending up with my special troops arrayed perfectly against their counter, and I paid the price. But you know, them's the breaks. You win some and you lose some. But it was a good game, but really, to be honest, I mean, the outcome's the outcome, and it is what it is, and I'm not overly bothered about winning or losing the game. I mean, you know, you should never be excessively competitive in my book anyway. Well, try not to be, although I always get accused of being competitive. So that was the outcome. But really what's the interesting thing here is to actually reflect on what the game was like. Of course, you know, we're trying a game of Horus Heresy in 8th edition using the information that we've got for the 40k lists. What did I think? Well, first observation on playing 8th was it felt very familiar, and it was not unlike playing 7th as a game. In terms of, if you'd say, well, what's 40k about conceptually as a game? Well, it's a fast-paced, medium to close range sci-fi skirmish war game, 28mm heroic scale. And in that respect, 8th edition plays just like 7th and other editions did. I don't really think it's any different at its heart. What we did both think about the game was the rules were, it was a lot easier to play. And let's just deconstruct that statement by saying it was easy to play. I don't think it meant it was simple to play, because there were still good tactics in there. There was still lots, you know, good tactics in there, correct deployment of units against the right sort of counters, you know, and vice versa. But it just felt like there was a lot less mental clutter in the way of executing your battle plan. And all the extra dice rolls that have gone into shooting and damage were a lot easier. I felt it was smoother, and things like not having template weapons to deal with made the game a lot smoother as well. It's much easier rolling for a number of shots, having to do template weapon fire. And also, my mate commented on this. He said it was just more relaxing to play as well. He said, I didn't feel that I was having to worry about minutiae of model placement. He appreciated that part of it, and yeah, no, I think that was a fair observation. I'm going to get that head in now. It's interesting to think about that. Vehicles, well, I mean, against small arms fire, the Rhino took a little bit of damage, but it wasn't really that bad. I guess if I'd been against his plasma gunners, the Rhino, and his heavy plasma guns, well, both of them, the Rhino would have been much more threatened. But then again, it's only one Rhino, and in its configuration as like a Razorback light, it was actually really rather effective and a lot of fun to play. So, you know, I like that. Right, just getting his head lined up now. I haven't got my kind of accelerant to hand, so I'm just have to, I think that's right. And he's going to go a bit like what? The important thing here is getting the head level. So he doesn't look like he's cocking his head. He looks like he's got his head held straight. Will do. You don't actually get any instructions with this, and there's no fold out, so it's all visually done. It's not too hard, this is a model, not too difficult really, although your mileage may vary depending on your experience of working with Forge World models. And talking of that, I think we will now mount him on this base. So I guess the question is, how do you figure out, okay, so the way you locate it, I think, is using this. Oh yeah, because you got, so you got the you got these bits here. So we'll put this on next. There are all sorts of ways you could put this together. This is just a way that's taken my fancy. Or when I say ways, there's different sequences in which this could go together. Just spreading the glue around a bit. Oops, a little bit much, a little bit more than I wanted there. No, I didn't want glue there. And then just an important check. There you go, see. So note to yourself, when you're doing this, make sure you fit this banister to make sure that both it and Ixion go together properly. So if you put him on, you might actually obstruct the fitting of that banister slightly. But there you go. So he's now on his base, got his head on, he's holding his helmet. I think it's probably time for his arm. 8th edition, interesting. I mean, it was only a small game, and it's only my first game. I mean, I guess with the way we did it, we'd taken a lot of the kind of flavour and individuality out of the Heresy in terms of all the Legion rules that were developed. However, at its heart, the Horus Heresy is about Marine versus Marine. It's civil war, and that's how it really started out in the first place. The Legion specific rules are nice, but don't get blinded by thinking that they're the absolute be-all and end-all of it, because they're not. Equally important is just a basic concept of Marine fighting Marine. And with the enormous range of Space Marine models, gear, heroes and tanks available, you can create a lot of individuality between legions just by doing that. I think it certainly has something to say for it. In terms of practical gaming, it certainly worked fine. The resources are there in the 3 books I talked about at the start. I think the book that's got the Mechanicum in as well might be a handy additional resource, because it's probably got a bit of stuff on Volkite weapons, although there does seem to be inconsistency between the Forge World writers and the Games Workshop writers as to how Volkite weapons work. So I think you got classic evidence there of the 2 working separately on the same project and coming up with a different answer. They need to align their thinking on that in the future. That, as I said, one of their intentions with 8th edition was to create a game that was much more simple to FAQ and revise. Whereas 6th and 7th edition was a massive, was a really rather big undertaking to do that sort of revisions. You had all the special rules which are so interdependent on one another and very easily conflicted. Coming together very nicely. This is, yeah, absolutely stunning miniature. It's looking great. Let's do, I think we'll do these shoulder pads next, these pauldrons. So this eagle device, one goes on his left hand side. Got decent contact there. Not sure how good it looks like a pretty decent contact all the way around. Might just put a little bit more glue, a little bit of glue outside of the notch, just to give a quicker grab. Excellent stuff. And now the second pauldron, which is probably my favourite, with the bas relief eagle on it, which needs a little bit of beak repair because we've got an air bubble on the beak. Oh well, unless you imagine it as having a suction nose. A little bit Slaneshy, that, isn't it? There we go. This guy looks what is generally referred to in technical circles as being badass. So what we've got now? So we've got a cutter to put on. It's going to go there. I'll bob a bit of glue in. As you can see, once all the parts are prepped, this model goes together dead easily. There's no multi-pose, no nothing, everything fits well, certainly on this example. I guess that's an advantage of the sort of character series models, there is no posing to do. You know, it goes together one way and one way alone. I think I've got that there. Could have done with a little squirt of accelerant, but it's not up in the penthouse, so I'll have to pass on that one. That just leaves a Misericordia and his Iron Halo to attach. And I'm just going to prep his base. 8th edition, I enjoyed it. I think my friend one of his criticisms of playing 7th is he just found all the special rules rather, as I say, a lot of mental clutter to play, and he really appreciated the freer flowing gameplay of 8th. And I enjoyed it for the same reason, I guess. I came away from it thinking I need to revise tactics and my tactics a bit and my game style, because everything's more lethal now. I've been saying this since I started really getting under the skin of 8th edition with the courage I've been giving of it. But yeah, everything is more lethal now. So that means your shooting's more potent, your melee's more potent, things can get into melee quicker. So yeah, that needs, I've got some digesting to do on that to get my head around it fully. I certainly will be getting around it more fully. I will be continuing to develop 8th edition Heresy play over as we move forward. Got a bit of glue there on my hand, never mind. Just mount the Iron Halo. Yeah, that's good. That fit really well. Very nice. I'm impressed by that. That went on really well. Now, the only thing that we've got a little bit of a okay, right, so the Misericordia goes down the front. I think it's a Misericordia, isn't it? Oh, Misericord, sorry. Misericord, I correct myself. So Misericord needs to go down the front. It's a shame that this was slightly misformed. I hope it won't show once it's painted. It's just passable, this. Just passable. I think, to be honest, yeah. I do like the detail on it though. It's got a little trigger for activating probably the power function. Right, does it have an attach? Oh right, so I should have probably stuck this on earlier. We've got 2 attachment points here. So it might be time for a pair of tweezers for positioning this guy. Yeah, I don't know if any of you guys and girls have played 8th yet. I mean, I'm a bit late getting started, but you know, that's just a busyness of real life and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I mean, if you're interested to hear what you think about 8th, I think it's going to work really well from a point of view of doing heresy gaming. Really well indeed. I see in its most straightforward form, I don't see any issues with doing it. And you can pretty much stick to the rules as is. Where you're going to have to do more and more creativity is if you want to introduce the Legion specific rules and Legion specific units as well. But to be honest, if you want to get into 8th and you want to play it as a heresy, then it's going to be well, that's going to be the MO. That's what you're going to need to have to do until such a time as Forge World comes along and says we've decided to do an 8th edition version of Horus Heresy. And clearly, you know, certain units are going to need translating. So things like, well, today, just now, the Telemon Dreadnoughts come out. So that would need a port over. However, you know, you can, given, you know, get a couple of those Forge World Imperial Armour books and you can see the general meta of translation, you know, just homebrew it. At the end of the day, particularly if you're playing friendly, then don't constrain yourself from having fun if that's what you want to do. Don't constrain yourself with sticking to exactly what GW and Forge World have published. You know, create some of your own stuff. Certainly what I'm going to do. Then still at the back of our head, you know, still in the back pocket or front pocket, depending how you look at it, we've still got the 7th edition rules, which is a complete game in itself. So yeah, from my point of view, what's not to like? You've got lots of choice, lots of options, lots of chances to be creative. And talking about being creative, I think that pretty much brings us to the end of this video and the completion of building Ixion Hale character series miniature exclusive to Warhammer World and events by Forge World. Absolute beautiful model. Yeah, great model. So I guess the next thing is I'll come back and do a full model build and rules review on this guy. Anyway, let me know what you think of this model. If you've got any questions about anything I've discussed as usual, you know, the battle report for 8th, the new models for 8th edition, or the upcoming open day, you know, very interested to hear. Apart from that, it just leaves me to say thank you very much for watching. I'll speak to you next time, and goodbye.